Hi there, and welcome to Movies Recapped. Today we'll be looking at a 2021 post-apocalyptic film called FINCH, starring the venerable Tom Hanks. We'll be discussing the overall plot of the movie, what happens during the film, and what meaning, if any, we can pull from it. Beware, there are massive spoilers ahead. One thing becomes immediately clear as soon as this film kicks off: Earth is royally screwed. Buried in a layer of dirt and plagued by killer dust storms, the planet is a victim of the same planetary body that used to give it life, the Sun. Tom Hanks's titular character Finch is forced to toil around the planet in a makeshift spacesuit as a means for survival in the barren wasteland of a post-apocalyptic Earth. A one-time employee of a robotics company, Finch's only companions are Dewey, a wheeled robot, and a canine partner he simply calls Dog. After narrowly escaping a devastating sandstorm, Finch retreats into the factory, focusing his attention on building a more advanced robot capable of independent thought and operations. As Finch and Dewey work together to scan in reams of books, adding it to the robot's encyclopedic knowledge, there is a breakthrough, and after scavenging the eyes from Dewey, Finch cobbles together the last vestiges of a functional AI for the robot. As the robot awakens and Finch starts teaching it how to do complex robot things like walk without falling over, they get an emergency alert of an incoming storm. This is no ordinary storm. This is a massive surge that is estimated to last nearly 40 straight days, a storm that would certainly kill everyone within the factory. Suddenly, plans have changed, and even though the robot's upload process is only at 72%, they decide an emergency evacuation is in order. The storm bearing down on them, Finch and the robot frantically pack up some gear into a recreational vehicle, loading Dewey and the dog inside, then take off from St. Louis, where they've been living, and head west. Finch reviews a collection of postcards with the robot, and they identify San Francisco as an appropriate destination, based on a postcard Finch says he got from his uncle. Throughout the planning process, we discover that there are still people alive out there, but past experience has taught Finch that he wants nothing to do with them. Rather than risk traveling east toward population centers, they elect to venture out into the western unknown, hoping for clear sailing to the Pacific coast. Equipped with solar panels on the roof, the RV provides enough power for them to survive as they venture out of St. Louis and head west throughout remote regions of a devastated United States of America. Along the way, it becomes clear that Finch is suffering from radiation sickness, likely as a result of the solar flares that plunged the world into chaos. The event apparently happened around 10 years ago, burning the ozone layer away, raising radiation levels and generating a nearly endless barrage of cataclysmic storms, ravaging a world already crippled by the flares. Finch instructs the robot in no uncertain terms that the primary reason it was built was so that someone would be around to take care of the dog, Goodyear, after Finch's death, which he believes is imminent as bloody noses and hacking coughs plague him constantly throughout the dangerous journey. It is during this conversation where Finch reveals that the dog actually does have a name after all, a name that will make more sense later. As the RV is ravaged by a sudden and violent tornado, the robot hammers down some cables to keep it grounded, even as winds hammer it from all directions, nearly tearing it apart. After the storm passes and the robot helps to fix the battered RV, it inquires about a name for itself, suggesting Jack, because it had helped jack up the RV to swap a mangled tire. After going back and forth on an appropriate name for the automaton, they finally land on Jeff. A simple, straightforward name that can't be mistaken for a dog's name, which was one of Finch's requirements up front. After helping to repair the vehicle, Jeff witnesses Finch falling ill and must learn how to drive the cumbersome RV, which takes a little getting used to, though soon he is almost effortlessly navigating the vehicle west toward San Francisco as Finch recovers from the debilitating illness that is now weakening him. Finch soon lapses into a deep sleep on the bed in the RV, leaving Jeff to lead the charge to San Francisco. Though when they pass near an abandoned hospital, Jeff decides to stop, taking the initiative, to find some medicine for Finch in hopes of making him well. Jeff and Dewey venture off from the RV and head into the hospital, searching for the right kind of medicine to help Finch recover, though things are not as they appear. The hospital is dark, plagued with ornate graffiti, windows covered with X-ray film, but there are no outward signs of life. As Finch awakens and looks out through the window, he's startled to see where they'd stopped and senses immediate danger. Donning his protective suit, he rushes out into the hospital, but not in time to save Dewey, who gets caught in a concealed bear trap and destroyed as Jeff searches an upper level for life-saving medications. Sensing a trap, Finch desperately searches for Jeff, eventually finding him, then orders him to leave the hospital. Jeff protests initially, but they eventually depart, returning immediately to the RV and driving away at speed. What they don't realize as they're pulling away is there was a car concealed in the shadows, and as they drive off, a pair of headlights illuminates, and someone takes off in pursuit. Finch, furious at Jeff for going into the hospital without showing a lick of common sense, lashes out furiously at the robot, berating him angrily and blaming him for the loss of Dewey, who, artificial or not, was part of their group, was one of them. As the sickness takes over again, Finch falls into a deep slumber with Jeff behind the wheel, and before he knows it, night has come. Jeff is still driving, and there's a pair of headlights following them along the isolated road, shadowed in darkness. In a last-ditch attempt to escape the approaching car behind them, Finch forces Jeff to take them off the main road, doubling back around to try and cut beneath the overpass. Jeff's rapid-fire analysis of the height of the overpass comes just a little too late, as the RV wedges itself beneath the bridge, ripping apart the roof-mounted solar panels and getting stuck out in the open where they can easily be seen by their pursuers. Wasting no time, Jeff leaps out of the RV and uses his robot strength to shove the vehicle forward, deeper under the overpass, hoping to hide it from view of the car taking chase. As the entire vehicle falls into a hushed silence, they can hear the muffled growl of a vehicle on the bridge above them, which stops for a few heart-wrenching moments, then eventually drives away, leaving them miraculously untouched as they speed off into the night. In spite of their narrow escape, Finch has officially reached the end of his rope, lamenting the loss of their solar panels, the near miss with their pursuers, along with his age and his health, sinking to the depths of despair as he realizes that, no matter what he seems to do, it always ends the same way, facing certain death. Slumping and defeated, Finch has a heart-to-heart with Jeff and confesses a sad story from the early days of the apocalypse. He tells Jeff about searching for food and taking shelter as a mother and her gun-toting 9-year-old daughter search the abandoned market. When a station wagon pulls up and a man gets out with a shotgun, Finch remains hidden, afraid of someone taking the box of noodles he found. The confrontation ended in violence, with both the mother and daughter being shot to death, and when Finch approaches them, he hears a soft whining coming from the young girl's pink backpack. He retrieves a small puppy from the backpack, afraid and alone, resting on top of a Goodyear tire, which reveals how the dog ended up with its name. Finch laments his lack of courage, telling Jeff that although the flares are what started the apocalypse, it was mankind itself that brought them all to this point. Jeff asks Finch if he was a disappointment because of what happened at the hospital, and Jeff assures him he wasn't, and apologizes for the way he spoke to him. In spite of Finch's melancholy, Jeff is determined to get them to San Francisco, and they continue their long trek in the RV. To their surprise, as they drive on through the morning, moving further and further west, a large butterfly strikes the windshield, the first sign of non-human life they've seen. Jeff excitedly rouses Finch, who ventures outside and is surprised that he does not feel the intense heat of the sun. Finch can hardly believe it, as he stands in the sun, arms outstretched, marveling at another butterfly that sets down on his hand. Jeff helpfully points out that the Swiss cheese atmosphere elsewhere doesn't appear to be in effect here, a fact that has Finch beside himself with joy. He dons a fancy suit, and they set up a table and umbrella, sitting outside in the sun, perhaps for the first time in years, eating what he describes as the best meal he's had in some time. Sitting in his fancy suit, Finch tells Jeff about his father, a man who sent him a single postcard from San Francisco, the postcard that inspired their journey, then laments the fact that he never saw or heard from his father after receiving that postcard. Inquiring about the other postcards in his collection, Jeff listens as Finch describes a humanity filled with contradictions and that he'd pledged to travel the world, gaining new experiences, yet had, for whatever reason, never found the chance. Telling Jeff that he's dying, the two of them play fetch with Goodyear, trying to coax the dog into fetching the ball from Jeff, knowing that eventually Finch will be gone, and Jeff will be the only person Goodyear has. The dog is hesitant, the creature of habit wanting only to play with Finch, in spite of their repeated attempts to get him to bring the ball back to Jeff. Finch reiterates that he built Jeff for the sole purpose of being Goodyear's companion, not wanting the dog to be alone after his death. There is a sudden, violent fit of coughing as Finch doubles over and must be helped back into the RV from Jeff, who lays him in bed. Goodyear, sensing his master's suffering, jumps up on the bed and curls up next to him, laying down, vowing to keep Finch company with whatever comes next. Late into the night, as Jeff picks up the table and umbrella, packing the RV for their next leg of their journey, Goodyear howls a mournful, pained howl, and Jeff understands that Finch has died, his best friend laying at his side. Wrapping Finch in sheets, Jeff sets the body on fire, giving him the Viking funeral he saw displayed in one of the postcards and wishing him safe passage into the next life. While he and Goodyear get back in the RV to continue the trip west to San Francisco. Eventually they arrive, placing a marker in the grass in view of the Golden Gate Bridge, then walk the bridge, reading hundreds of notes there left by the people displaced by the solar flares. They place their own note, a postcard with a hand-drawn trio of Finch, Jeff, and Goodyear, and we see that Goodyear is now joyfully playing fetch with Jeff. Side by side, they walk toward the RV and plan to drive into the city to see what they can see. Thanks again for visiting Movies Recapped. Have a great day.